Hello, everyone, and welcome to Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and once again, I'll be in the driver's seat for today's show as we learn how to stop just chasing paychecks and how to start closing customers for life. And we learn this by talking to some of the most exceptional, influential, successful people in their industries to see how they were able to achieve their success. And we have a great show for you today, folks, because once again, we have a great guest, Mr. Eric Cole. Eric, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure, my friend.
So, Eric, why don't you tell everybody what it is you do?
So I'm a cybersecurity geek. So I build and sell cybersecurity companies. So I'm that rare mix of entrepreneur, but I also love coming up with ideas and protecting and creating those ideas. So my main purpose for what I do, anything these days, is to secure cyberspace. To me, the internet was created as a tool for value, for collaboration, for benefit, and it has been turned as a tool for evil, where it is targeting us and our families and our kids. So my mission is to make cyberspace a safe place to live, work, and raise a family.
It's a noble goal, and I heard entrepreneur in there somewhere, and I mean I think that's a genius role to fill, because definitely a place for that. What got you started doing that, Eric?
So I was at the CIA for 10 years as a professional hacker. So really got into the mindset of the adversary. So it's one of those where it's sort of scary because I have to watch myself, because I can think and act like a attacker, but that's not who me. I sort of have a heart of gold, and I love to help people. So I have to make sure I'm using my forces for good. I'm sort of, a lot of my friends call me the modern day Luke Skywalker, where the dark side keeps trying to get me out there. But what I realized is, people that make money, people that are highly successful, what they're really good at is taking other people's ideas and monopolizing it. Like, if you look at a lot of these big tech companies, the brilliant tech guys often don't make as much as the business people, because the business people are the one that materialize. So to me, my philosophy is everyone at some point in their life should start their own business. You should bet on yourself. And what I'm talking about is, if you work for somebody else and you earn them $1, you get 20 cents on the dollar. They're taking 80% to run the business, you get 20 cents. What if you actually bet on yourself, took one of your ideas and marketed it, and now when you earn $1, you keep $1. So you can actually go in, if you do it correctly, and multiply your current income by 4 or 5x just by doing the overhead that you would normally get from a business owner, and do that yourself.
Yeah, no, be able to provide the structure, the question really has to be whether or not the people are willing to make the additional sacrifice to do it, because, and I know you know this, Eric, there's a big difference between leaving work at the end of the day and having that be it. And as the role of an entrepreneur, which when you leave work is, you don't really, it kind of comes with you pretty much everywhere you go. You're constantly thinking about it. Everything is your thing. And so, I totally agree with you, man. I love the idea of being an entrepreneur. I've opened many businesses myself. It's whether or not, because I have people that I know that they're just super smart, but they're just unwilling to make that additional sacrifice, that what we'll say is the extra 20% more sacrifice they'd have to make to be able to get the 80%. They don't want to take and make that.
And I want to play off that word, because you're right, sacrifice. But what I always love doing when I work with folks is reframing it a little bit, because when you say sacrifice, they think they're losing something.
Sure.
In reality, the sacrifice is really, to me, a fear, where they're afraid of failure. They're afraid of, well, what if I'm not successful? There's no safety net there. Yep. But what I realize is, if you look at today, the job market, there's no safety net.
Absolutely.
These companies, if they're not making the money they should, they will cut you in a heartbeat. And therefore, people just have to recognize that it's the same sacrifice, whether you're working for somebody else or working for you. The question is, are you willing to embrace that fear, let it go, and say, hey, if they can do it, I can do it. And I sort of call it, instead of betting on red at the roulette table, you bet on yourself.
Sure. No, I get it. And it makes a lot of sense. I think that the idea of really getting to where people's risks lie. I deal with it a lot because I talk a lot with investment, and I have people, gee, I'm afraid of investing, and I'm like, well, if you don't invest, what does that position look like? Which is that you are the sole breadwinner. If anything happens to you, I mean, what's about having your eggs in one basket? Most people's lives revolve around their own ability to work. The second they can't work, it all comes crashing down, right? So you have your eggs entirely in a basket. And when people take that different assessment of that risk of sitting here not looking at it as, well, gee, I don't want to lose money. Gee, if anything happens to me, I don't have any way to support myself. It's kind of like what you're talking about here, which is taking a look at the real risk that's involved of the position that you're in. Most people want to take a look at the position that you're espousing. You're saying, hey, look, you should do this, and say, oh, no, that doesn't look nearly as good. But when you turn it back and look at your existing position, what standing still looks like, that position usually is a lot less good, a lot worse than people actually think that it is. And I find that that's actually a piece of the argument that is, as you're talking about, quite compelling, sitting here saying, hey, what does standing still look like? That's not a winner. So let me ask you about this, Eric. What is it you like best about what you do?
Helping people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really at the end of the day. I'm one of those folks where I have a couple lines of business. So one of my lines of business, I have patent portfolio, and we do litigation and things like that. And it's funny, that's where I make all of the money. But what I realize is that's not where I get most of my happiness, pleasure, and joy from. And it hit me a couple months ago because we went to trial. And we won. It was a $400 million case.
Nice.
And I get a percent. So it was a very nice sort of payday. And everyone's out celebrating. And I just was like, I'm not in the mood. And I went back to my room and I'm depressed and a little down. And I have these conversations with myself. And I'm like, dude, you just won. And I'm like, yeah, but did I change any lives today? Did I actually make a difference or help somebody? And the answer was no. I just transferred money between two big companies. And then I realized other times when I'm on a coaching call with somebody and all of a sudden they had a roadblock where they're like, I am not a CISO, I can't be a chief information security officer. And I removed that roadblock. And within 3 weeks, they get a job as a CISO where they were trying for 3 years and couldn't. And that gives me more happiness, even though the amount of money I got paid was a lot less. So I'm realizing I'm at that point now where when you can chase money and make a lot of it, but it doesn't bring happiness. And what I'm realizing is if you chase happiness, and this is the hardest risk at all, and you don't focus on money, which scares the gajibas out of you, you actually end up making more money in a more fruitful way.
I mean, at the end of the day, the money really provides the freedom to take and pursue the things that are meaningful. But for most people, they get to the money, they think that's the end. And the money, all the money does is give you the flexibility to start to pursue the things that maybe you're more passionate about. And those things eventually can wind up being the things that bring in more money than anything else as well. It really is very much that idea of the old man in the sea. You know, you chase the big payoff, the big settlement, the big court win, and you get it back. And it just doesn't feel like it because it's not what really matters. It's a very interesting thing when we chase things so hard sometimes in life, and they wind up not being, when you finally get them, they don't give you the pursuit of happiness moment that you want at the end.
And it's funny you say that because that's the thing I've been learning is the joy is in the journey. It's not in the destination. It's the work that you're doing along the way. And what I have a trouble with is fun is a hard word for me because I say work is fun, but reality work isn't. And what I realize is you need to celebrate the small wins because when you get the big win, it's not as satisfying because it was the journey that matters, not the destination.
Yeah, it's almost the end can almost be anticlimactic. And now what kind of? Where do you think all the success came from for you?
I think the success really came from just me believing in myself, me really clear that I can do it.
Yeah.
And it took a while because we all have gone through self-help and all those different things. And we all do affirmations and all that other stuff. But what I find is there's a difference between saying it and really believing it, like really embracing it and owning it. And then me really stepping into it. Like what started changing things for me is I always wanted Lamborghini, I mean, G6s and all those things. And pictures don't do it at all. But what I started doing is actually going and test driving and viewing them. So
Mm,
actually sitting in what I wanted and
mm,
driving it and experiencing it. And it's funny, if I go in, and I got to be careful now, if I want something, if I go and touch it, feel it, drive it, taste it, feel it, I know that I will probably get it in about 2 to 3 months because it becomes so real. But you
mm,
have to be careful, because if you do too much of that, it could actually be a stress on the system, not a
mm,
joy. So it's really just getting to the point where you are envisioning it to the point where it's so real that it becomes real.
mm. That makes sense. What do you think in your makeup makes you good at what you do?
It's the balance.
Mm,
To me, that's really the biggest thing. Because if I'm too much techie
mm,
and I'm doing too much creation, then what I end up finding is I'm creating great products, but nobody's buying them because nobody knows about it.
yeah.
And that's what thing, because at the end of the day, I think all people sort of have one of three default modes of operation. It's either an entrepreneur, which is growing, expanding, it's a manager, which is organizing, or it's an artist, which is a creator.
Hmm.
And you need all three, but one of those is going to be natural to you. And I always fought it. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. But the reality is, at the end of the day, if you get me alone, I'm an artist.
Hmm.
I love creating, and I love recording, like sitting in my studio and creating content. That's my happy place. But I got to a point where I created all these great, amazing courses on cybersecurity and entrepreneur and all this stuff, but I wasn't doing any of the marketing. So I was the best kept secret in the industry.
Mm,
So then what I had to do is I had to go, okay, we have to balance it. And the way to balance things is to be imbalanced. So the way I bring balance, if I'm doing 80% of creation, but only 20% of entrepreneur, balance isn't 50-50, because it's still going to be in balance. The way you get balanced is I now go 80% entrepreneur and 20% marketing for 6 months. And being out of balance for 6 months actually brings me back in balance. So it's
sure.
really just constantly assessing. And I don't like yearly goals. I know having 5 and 10 year goals are great because big vision, but to me, I'm all about quarterly goals. It's 90-day sprints. Right? Everything I do, I'm go for 90 days. What is my breakdown? What percent is entrepreneur? What percent is managerial? And what percent is artist for the next 90 days? And I actually set that parameter. And then no matter what happens, I commit to 90 days. Then after 90 days, I readjust.
Mm. No, that makes sense. I mean, the idea of setting a clear thing that you're shooting for that is a distance away that gets maximum yield out of you. Because I mean, you're right. If it's a year, it's far enough off. That race is too long for me to see the goal line and keep sprinting hard. But if I move the goalpost shorter, if I break it into a series of four shorter races, that goalpost is close enough. It keeps me running harder for the goalpost, and it also allowed me the next race to be a little bit better defined. I like that's good stuff. Let me ask the other side of that, which is this: how do you manage yourself? Unmet expectations, when there's disappointments, when it doesn't work out as you'd like.
I would say a work in progress, because that's sort of the constant one of never.
That sucks. Yeah.
I'm like anybody who says they're not harder on themselves is lying, right? Because it always is. What I do is, and it's one of the weirdest things to people, but what I realized is I would hire a lot of coaches, and I know this is going to be ironic for me to say because I am a coach, but the best coach out there, the best coach ever created for you is yourself.
Yeah.
So one thing I do, which is a weird thing, but it's so powerful, is I actually sit in front of a mirror. I look myself in the eye, and I have conversations with myself where I
Mm.
really go, okay, Eric, you're pissed off. You're not happy with yourself. You missed the expectation.
Yep.
And this keeps going. Like you kept missing it over and over again. A silly example. but it's important to me is I'm big into health because I believe if the body is not optimal, then it can't take you to the finish line. And
Right.
too many people neglect their health and their body. So to me, eating a healthy diet of sort of vegetables and meats 6 times a day
Mhm.
was the hardest thing for me because I like I like my munchies and my hot dogs and my onion rings and everything else. And I would set this goal and I just would never keep it. So I just sat there and had a conversation where I said, Eric, what is really going on? Why are you setting a goal that you are not meeting? And the reality was, I really didn't think it was important. I
Mm.
really didn't think it was great because guess what? I was getting away with it.
Mm.
If you look at me with a fitted shirt, I look pretty good and pretty defined. So I was getting away with it of eating shitty. So I was doing things that the world wanted me to do. I was following the rules of the world. The world says you need to eat healthy. The world says you need to have 6 meals a day. So I was pretending that was important, but the reality is it wasn't important to me.
Mhm.
So what I said is, okay, what is really the most important thing? It's really about the health. So how can we create a diet that essentially is a DoorDash diet? Because here's the reality. I'm by myself most of the time. I travel most of the time.
Mhm.
And every fitness consultant that I ever hired are like, Eric, if you're eating out, there's no way you can be healthy. You got to cook yourself. You got to meal prep. You got to do. And here's the reality. Where I'm at in my life,
Yeah, no way. No freaking way. Yeah, no freaking way. I mean, I love these guys that like live to go to the gym, and they own gym shoes in every color and a sports band for their watch, and they accessorize and little wristbands, and they got a strap for this. I did that. There was a period in my life when I was 3% body fat. I did that, and yeah, now I'm an adult, and like I have to do adult stuff too. Like I can't just be about one thing. It's such a crock of crap. I mean, the reality of it is you can take and myopically focus on one thing and you could be great at that thing, but you're going to have to realize that everything else is going to have to suffer. And so, what you're saying is there's other priorities that had to be addressed as well. And you needed to take an earmark within the constraints of this is the macro picture of how I'm trying to make my life. And I want to keep every one of these plates spinning as best I can. How can I get enough twist on this plate to keep it where I need it without it falling off the stick, right? I mean, I don't want to be sitting there, the fat guy sitting there with the big, thing of ice cream every night, but, like somewhere in between, like I can live a real life.
you nailed it. And yeah, I call it the pendulum swing,
Mm-hmm.
where everything in life is a pendulum.
Sure.
And you need the way you stay balanced is with movement. That middle point is where the balance is.
And the pendulums move fastest past sanity. Every
At
time.
that point too long, you're not moving. And
Yeah.
the question you have to decide is all of the energy comes from the downswing, but pulling it back is where the pain is. So how much pain do I want to take before I let it go? And the question is the more pain, the more momentum. So it's
Sure.
exactly what you said. Put enough spin on the plate to keep it going for the period of time, but not too much that I'm overexerting or too little. So it's all just scaling and managing. And like with what I said is I have my 90-day sprints or targets, but then I break those down to monthly, weekly, and daily. If you look at my calendar, it is scheduled from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. I schedule everything. I schedule reading time. I schedule downtime. And most people look at that and go, that's exhausting. And I go, how's life with you now? And they're like, it's exhausting. I'm like, exactly. Once you get it down, it's so liberating because guess what? Now all you have to do is show up and execute, which is what we're really made for. And now we're not focusing on what do we do with our spare time. My entire day is scheduled and it's so relaxing and so
Yeah,
powerful.
of course it is. You've given yourself guidance as to what your expectation for the day is. People push back against that so much because it's something that I teach all the time as well. The idea of, as the CEO of the operation, let me define for me, the staff, what I need me to do today to live the kind of day that I want me to live. And that way I can go into work and just execute, as you said. Nothing is better than having a clearly predefined plan that all I do is go in and execute. So what do you see, kind of a little bit of a change of pace question, what do you see as the opportunity in the market today?
to me, the biggest opportunity is really how to leverage technology as a tool to enhance your lives and people's lives as opposed to letting it control you.
Hmm.
If we look right now,
Mhm.
social media isn't a tool.
Mhm.
It is an addiction that's
Mhm.
overtaking you. You don't control social media. Social media controls you. But most people, when they're surfing or checking their phone and they're always looking at things, I'm like, what is your goal? What is your objective? And they're like, I don't know. They're just bored out of their mind. And this is where I'm so concerned about AI or artificial intelligence. People are so caught up on AI right now that it's controlling their life. Like I have friends that go, Eric, I sit there with AI tools and I brainstorm for 3 hours a day. And I'm like, okay, and how much money is that making you? How is that changing your lives? And it's not. So what it is we see these tools and then they take over us and become addiction. So to me, it's really how can we train people to use AI as a tool to enhance your life instead of controlling and dominating it?
Yeah, how to use the tool properly rather than just to have the tool and have it do nothing. That's be an end to itself. Um, this is a little bit more of a get to know you section a little bit. Kind of your first take on these questions is probably best. What would you say is the most important thing you've learned in the process of doing what you've done, Eric?
Probably most important thing
Mm-hmm.
is controlling change
Hmm.
is critical because I would often go in and fearful of change. And you see the phrase, if you keep doing what you've always doing, you'll keep have what you always have. And then the other phrase I like is everybody thinks you're crazy and insane until you're successful and then they think you're brilliant.
Yeah,
So to me, my problem is I usually operate in one of two modes, either 0 or 100.
zero or
So
hero. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I'm either not making any decisions, I'm not executing on anything because I'm afraid or I want to let things go out, or I show up and I make 20 decisions in a day and I mean half of them blow up because they weren't well thought out. So to me the big thing is really going slow to go fast is really just slowing down and saying, okay, what if I just make one important decision a day? That's it. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to decide when I wake up in the morning, what is the one thing that I want to focus on today? What is the one thing that if I do will make today a great day?
Hmm.
One thing, not 20, but one thing. And then I focus today on, am I ready to make that decision? And then I make one decision. I do one action or one area I'm focused on. Now, it's funny because sometimes my day is done at 2 o'clock.
Hmm.
Like I'm done. And the problem is we think you have to work this 8 to 5 schedule or entrepreneurs have to work till 2 a.m. in the morning. And that's just crap. So sometimes I'm at the gym at 2:30 in the afternoon and I'm relaxing and I'm doing brainstorming and other stuff. Other times I'm working till 8 p.m. at night. So it's really not letting time manage or control your life. It's really all about letting what is the one goal or one objective or one decision you need to make today. And then once you do that, be at peace with it and don't try to force more things or more work onto the plate.
There was one thing that you said early on in that, Eric, that I want to circle back to, which is you said that you make a bunch of decisions and half of them blow up. And I think this is really an important idea because as a successful person, I think people have a misunderstanding that you have to make only right decisions. Like everything has to go perfectly. You're going to get it wrong a bunch of the time. It's just getting it right a little bit more than you get it wrong that winds up being the differentiator and learning from your mistakes and starting to make more and more right decisions. But the paralysis of fear, I think a lot of times comes from people thinking that if anything goes wrong, it's not going to work. And so,
It's funny you say that because I do the 3 out of 5 rule, which is this. My goal at the end of the week is because we do Monday through Friday, so 5 days. So I make it 5 big decisions.
mhm.
But my goal is on Saturday when I review, 3 of those decisions in hindsight should have been right and 2 should have been wrong.
Beautiful.
And if I'm not 3 out of 5, I adjust because here's the reality. If I'm 5 out of 5, if
You're
every
too
decision
conservative.
I make is the right decision, I am not aggressive enough.
Yeah.
I'm too timid. I'm playing too small. On the other hand, if 0 out of 5 were right decisions, then I'm way too aggressive and way over the line. So every week on Saturday, I actually look back and I say, okay,
Balance
now that
out.
you're
Good
there,
balance.
once again, balance. So it's usually between 2 to 4. If it's 2 to 4, it's great. But if I see that, like this week it was 2, so I adjust. I'm not as aggressive. Next week it's 3. Next week it's 4. I'm like, oh, I'm heading in the wrong direction. So then I get a little more aggressive, and then it drops 3-2. So it really, the ideal scenario is it's 2-3-4-3, 2-3-4-3, and you're just sort of throttling back and forth because you're never going to hit it perfectly, but
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah.
to keep throttling. Yep.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. What are you most proud of in business that you've accomplished, would you say?
Probably the thing I'm most proud of is that I actually started becoming an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Because when I worked at the government, I mean, I was making contributions, saving lives, doing great things, but I
Hmm.
wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe in myself. And the first few companies, I actually worked for other people to learn. But where
Hmm.
I actually decided where I'm going to bet on Eric and go out and start my own company. And this is the part that a lot of people miss is it wasn't whether the company was successful or not that was my biggest accomplishment. My biggest accomplishment is that I did it.
Doing it.
And the reality is that the first one I did wasn't very successful, but I'm proud of the failure.
Yeah.
Because I'm proud that I did it. After that, my second and third and fourth ones, very successful. My fifth one is on track right now to be, but it's not the successful company that's my greatest achievement. It was the failure that I was bold enough to actually take a risk.
Yeah, yeah. Bold enough to go out there and try. Similar question, but a little bit more personal. What are you most proud of in life that you've accomplished?
I would say my health and fitness. And the reason is, at the end of the day, body is foundation.
Hmm.
Body and mindset are foundation. If you're not healthy and you don't have a good, clear mindset, then you're not going to be successful in business. And I see a lot of folks successful in business, and they've had major operations, they've had heart attacks, they've had all these other things. So to me, and people think it sounds vain or conceited or things like that, but to me, I'm 54, and when I go out, put on a nice fitted T-shirt, and people actually comment, going, "Dude, you're like in really good shape. How old are you?" And I say 54, and they're like, "Holy crap, we thought you were in your 40s."
Hmm.
I'm proud of that because most people neglect the
Yeah.
foundational component that's most important. So the fact that I've been able through thick and thin to keep my health where it's at and keep my fitness where it's at, despite all of the other competing goals, is sort of one of the personal things I'm proud of.
Love it. One piece of advice you would give our listeners.
One piece of advice is take time to really create your own rules for the game of life.
Hmm.
Because here's the reality. Our first 18, 20 years of life, you were given the rules by somebody else. Your
Sure.
parents, your teachers, someone else, that they installed their beliefs on you, and you took these beliefs to be fact. But the reality is, everything you think is a fact is fictional. It is not true. And most of us miss an important chapter in life, which I believe between college and going to work, everybody should take a year where they just travel the world and they get clear about who they are and create their rules of life. And most of us never done that. So to me, we probably can't take a year off right now. But what if you actually just, instead of going golfing on Saturday, instead of going out and watching football on Sunday, what if you just took 4 hours a week to really go in and ask yourself a simple question? What's currently not working in my life? What is the belief that's holding me back? And actually make a decision to call BS on that belief and create a new belief. What if every week we actually created a new truth for ourselves, a new rule of the game of life? That would be 52 major changes in a year, and you would be a completely different person.
Good stuff. If you had to pick, this could be a tough one. What one book would you recommend?
Yeah. I read so much. I'm just going through because that's a tough one.
I know it is.
All of them. This one, I normally don't do this, my friend, but I'm on a mission to secure cyberspace, so I'm going to be selfish on
Okay.
this one. And normally I don't do this. This is the first time ever when I've asked this question, I'm given this answer, but I'm just going to bet on Eric. Cyber Crisis. That's my latest book that was written really as a novel to help common people understand the risks and exposure and raise awareness. Because here's the reality, just like your health, if you're not secure in cyberspace, if you have an identity theft or your bank account is broken into, it could ruin your year. It could ruin your month. It could ruin your week. So we need to, just like we have health, we need our cyber hygiene. So I would say Cyber Crisis would be my recommendation.
All right. Favorite movie of all time?
Favorite movie of all time would probably see that's another tough one that changes, but I would have to say Gone in 60 Seconds.
Okay. Good movie.
I love cars. I love going fast. Nicolas Cage is awesome. And I tell you, that movie has so many hidden gems in it. I watch it at least once a month. So I would say Gone in 60 Seconds.
Nice. All right. Famous person in history you'd want to meet if you could?
Most famous person would be Neville Goddard.
Okay.
Most people haven't heard of him, but he's one of the foundational folks of self-help. And I love his books. I almost recommended his books, but they're a little not politically correct, so I don't want to offend anyone. But Neville Goddard's books are also awesome. I'd love to spend some time with Neville Goddard.
All right. Person from your past you'd want to sit down with and have lunch with today if you could?
I would say my friend Gary. He was my boss at the CIA. He became a good friend, and we known each other for 30 years. And he was always a source of wisdom. I was always getting so much information from him. And 2 weeks ago, I'm in the gym at 6 a.m. in the morning, and I get a text, "Is this Eric? Please call me." And normally those are scams, but something told me to call him back. I call it back, and there's a lady's voice, and she says, "You've met me a couple of times, but I'm Gary's fiance, and Gary just passed away."
Oh, jeez.
I didn't see him for 18 months. And while I don't like to live with regrets, I wish I would have had lunch with him one more time. So it's just, we don't realize how precious time is. And friends are the most precious commodity. So don't sacrifice them for your business.
Good stuff. What one piece of advice would you go back and give a younger version of you?
Slow down.
Okay.
I tend to think fast is better and you got to go quick. But the reality is, if I just slow down and would think about things a little bit more, the answers are within me, and I would make different decisions. Because how many times do we make a decision and within 5 hours we're like, that's a mistake.
Yeah, that wouldn't work
We're
out.
giving ourselves a little more time. So I'd just be like, dude, Eric, you're doing a great job, my friend, but just slow it down. You don't have to go fast. Even though time is precious, there's plenty of time. Go slow and do it right the first time.
Good stuff. Good advice. If you had to pick somebody to be stuck in a foxhole with taking fire, who would you pick?
Elon Musk.
All right. What do you do to unwind?
Go to the gym or go to the shooting range. To me, just either lifting weights or firing a pistol require enough concentration that they just take me away from life for a period of time.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Both are good. I'm a fan of both. What's next for you, Eric? What's the next project?
Next project is to sort of shift my focus from building businesses for money to really making a contribution to society. And it's something that you'll be one of the first people to hear this, because I just decided that I'm going to start doing this January 1. But America is under fire. We're under cyber war. We're under attack. And nobody's leading the charge of educating and making people aware. So I decided I'm going to be a self-appointed czar of America. So I'm America's cyber czar, where I'm just going to educate people. I'm going to educate Congress, and I'm going to help make changes that actually protect society from all the dangers on the internet.
Good stuff. Last question. Where can people find you, Eric?
You can either go to my website, Dr. Eric Cole, DrEriccole.org, drericcole.org. That's my personal site. Secure-anchor.com is my professional site, or DrEriccole. Dr. Eric Cole is my handle on Instagram and other platforms.
Good stuff. Eric, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your wisdom, and for just hanging out with us and having a chat. It was really great getting a chance to chat with you.
I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on the show, Josh.
My pleasure. And for all our guests, thanks for hanging out with us and spending your time. Reminding you always, guys, there is never a good excuse not to know your shit. Till next time.